What is going on, YouTube? Fascinating Graveyard. It is your host with the most, Lamont Dorsey. Please don't Google me. Today, we are in Plattsburgh, Missouri. We're at the Green Lawn Cemetery. We're going to visit the grave of David Acheson. Technically, he was the President of the United States of America for one day. Kind of, sort of. It's a story that I thought that you guys would find interesting and fascinating. So without further ado, let's go to his grave. We're going to talk a little bit about the history and why he was, or wasn't, whatever you want to think, the President of the United States of America for one day. Come with me. David Rice Acheson was born on August 11th, 1807 in Frogtown, Kentucky. Hey, that's pretty cool. There's actually a gang in Los Angeles called Frogtown. More on that at a later date and time. What's up, Holmes? Anyways, so David was a practicing attorney in the state of Missouri, and he was also a plantation owner, and I could tell you a couple different things about Mr. Acheson. Number one, he fought for the rights of Mormons to live their life and to practice their religion in a free society. And number two, this mofo loved himself some slavery. Oh yeah, he loved slaves. He owned several slaves on his plantation in the good old state of Missouri. Very pro-slavery. As a matter of fact, when Kansas was not a state, this guy who had at one time, he served, I believe it was in the Missouri State Militia, and had served as a Confederate Army brigadier, or is it brigadier? Whatever that word is. And he was responsible for several incursions going into Kansas, fighting against abolitionists and what have you. He would go to Kansas and give speeches, and he really hated pro-union Jayhawkers over in that area, you know. And I don't know why, but during his time as he was living in Missouri, he also, I believe, studied and practiced law, other than owning slaves and owning a plantation. And he was a United States Senator. He served from 1843 to 1845. And during his time in the Senate, this guy was really, really popular. I'm not really sure why this guy was so popular in the Senate, because of all those incursions of him going into Kansas and fighting against abolitionists was in fact partly to blame for the cause of the Civil War. However, he was popular in the Senate, and as a matter of fact, so popular that he was voted for every year that he served in the Senate pro tempore. So pro tempore, which is Latin for in place of, was the person that was supposed to be in charge of the Senate when the vice president was out doing business. So in those days, you had whatever president. So the president's the president. Then you have the vice president who is in charge and he oversees the Senate. And if the vice president had to go somewhere on business, you would have a vice president pro tempore in place of the vice president. So he would oversee the Senate on the times where the vice president was out doing vice presidential business. So he was voted every year that he was, a senator in the Senate. And so the story of how he was technically the vice president of the United States goes as follows. So in 1849, you had a presidential election between James Polk, who was the incumbent, and Zachary Taylor, who was a very well-known general, and he was quite popular in the nation. So Zachary Taylor wins the election, thus becoming the 12th president of the United States of America. Now, at the time when he's taken over the office for James Polk, he has a vice president named George M. Dallas. Now, George M. Dallas is the vice president. So back in those days, on March 4th at noon of every year, that was the time when they would change over Senate seats and presidential seats, right? So in 1849, March 4th at noon, the presidency was supposed to be handed over from James Polk to Zachary Taylor. Now, George Dallas, who was the vice president for James Polk, had taken off for the remainder of the season. So David Atchison was the technical, vice president tempore. So on March 4th, 1849, you're supposed to have a succession of power. James Polk to Zachary Taylor. But for some unknown reason, Zachary Taylor, who was a very conservative Christian man, did not want to take the presidency on the Christian Sabbath. So he tells whoever he needs to tell, he said, listen, let's just do it on Monday, March 5th, 1849. And the law says that the presidential seat must be handed over at noon on that day. So James Polk, he writes in his ledger, he basically just says, it is on this day, noon, March 4th, 1849, that my presidency ends. Probably didn't say it in those exact words, but that's basically what he said. This closed my official term as president. I think that's what he exactly said. So nobody's a president. So legally, James Polk is no longer the president, and Zachary Taylor is not being sworn in until the following day. So guess what? Technically, David Atchison, even though it's not written in the history books that he was the president, just by that weird fluke, he kind of was the president. Now, I don't think anything was going to happen in any kind of a major way. It's Sunday, 1849. There's not much doing. You know what I'm saying? I think that maybe, people wouldn't miss the president, right? I don't think anybody's going to really feel that it's a big deal that there's no president. But what if something had happened? What if an assassination had taken place? Would then it be known that this man was the president? Now, David Atchison, he would later go on to say that he didn't feel he was the president. So he didn't really accept that title. He probably thought it was kind of funny that people thought he was a president. But in actuality, well, he kind of was. Anyways, this is his grave right here. David Rice Atchison, President of the United States for one day. Sunday, March 4th, 1849. Oh, and he owned slaves. But what are you going to do, huh? What are you going to do? By the way, in future videos, I plan on exposing all of the presidents. That is my goal, as to expose all of the presidents of the United States, all the bad misdeeds that they've done. But anyways, nonetheless, a part of our nation's history. And even though this was a fluke, because no longer do we do things on that date on a Sunday, or I think we do them on a Sunday, but something like that would never, ever be allowed. Must have been a sad day for this guy when the North won the war and all his slaves were able to be free. Anyways, part of our history. Rest in peace to David Rice Atchison, President of the United States for one day and slave owner. Okay, guys, I am out of here. I want to thank the carnies across the street for not yelling during my video because these guys were going absolutely bonkers. Anyways, I am out of here, guys. Perfect day to do a video. Glad that it was successful. All right, I will see you on the next episode of Fascinating Graveyard. Leave a comment below. Tell me how I did. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me what I got right. Tell me, is there a grave that you consider fascinating that you think I should cover? If you have any stories for me, send me an email, lamontAtLargeStories@gmail.com. lamontAtLargeStories@gmail.com, or you could hit up my Instagram, lamontatlarge, message me there. I know, guys, I am bad at getting back to you in messages, but I do get back to people. It just, takes me a long time because I have to sit and write down in my notebook the ideas that people send me. So it's easier and faster to just get it to lamontatlargestories@gmail.com. Okay, guys, I'm out of here. I'm probably going to go live stream right now. Have a good one. Peace out.